Hello, this is Elementary Airsoft, and today I'm going to be bringing you, first off, a quick update to my R-hopping process. If you remember before, we use a piece of this tubing, 6mm OD tubing, to make a jig to cut our patches. Now, previously I had shown you how to make a cut and then cut it down this way to do it. I've come up with a much easier way, and actually one of the other fellow Redditors has also done it. So let's come over here to my barrel setup. So if we insert it into the barrel, how it's supposed to go, you can simply take your razor blade, push it up into the corner of your hop-up window at a low angle, and you can pull the tube out, and then you end up with, the cut at the right depth. I apologize for the focusing issues here. I didn't do a full one because I didn't need to make a jig for this barrel. I already have one. But it's just so you can see that. So that's that. A lot quicker and easier. But today, the dominant focus of our topic is going to be, let me move my light here, lapping. Okay, so what is lapping? Lapping is the procedural process, or in Airsoft, it's the procedural process of, we take essentially diamond compound, which I have assorted grits here, or a fine diamond compound, and we pass it through your barrel using what is called a lap. Here are some brand new laps. These are designed by Huntseeker 5, I believe. And come on, Shapeways. It's printed nylon. Basically, these are spring-loaded pads. They'll push out against the outside of your barrel as we push them through, and essentially we're going to sand it. And why do we want to do that? Because when a barrel is machined, it isn't, there's several things that happen. There get left behind little imperfections from the milling process, as well as the fact that as your milling bit goes through the barrel, it can wander up and down. So the inside of your barrel can essentially look like this. Okay, now that's somewhat exaggerated, but the point is it can be wavy a bit. Now this is a lot easier to see if you look at it like a really cheap pistol barrel, or something like that, like a well barrel, for instance, or even my stock JG Bar 10 barrel. If you hold it at the right angle, you can definitely see that there's waves going on. So the process of moving our lapping piece through the barrel, we slowly sand off these peaks and bring them closer to the valleys. So what it does is it helps to increase the consistency of the inside of your barrel, as well as, think of, from like the front view, the circle of our barrel, you might have like a little bump out there or a little groove in as well, and it helps smooth out some of those milling inconsistencies. The other part of what lapping does is it polishes the interior of the barrel, and that just helps with airflow. When you're lapping, you always move in a straight in and out fashion. You don't spin it. Spinning it will create more horizontal grooves, and it won't do as much to eliminate our waves. So you pass it back and forth, and then you, every so often, you rotate the bit a bit so you aren't cutting any sort of grooves, and then continue doing the same thing. Okay, so now we know conceptually what it does. Today, I'll be going through and showing you how to lap on this 602 Mad Bull stainless steel barrel for a customer. And just another incidental thing here. I happen to have a trimming from a ZCI barrel And if we look at the typeface or the font on these here, it matches, as well as the spacing and the grooves for the O-rings up here. So this really leads me to believe that Mad Bull is just rebranding as ECI on their stainless steel barrels. It's really only the little logo here is different. But so first step, or I guess we'll go over what you need real quick. So we're going to be using rubbing alcohol as a cleaning agent in between rounds. I have a 5mm OD. I believe this is a nylon rod. I'm using the lapping bits that have the dovetail fitting on the back. Here's the drive rod piece here. So you can slide on your new bit. The other important thing to keep in mind is, or at least for me, I like to keep one bit per grit. You can't reuse grits of a bit unless they are of a coarser grit on the same bit. And of course we want to start out coarsest to finest grit. And I'm missing one. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so I start out normally with a 20 grit, then I go to a 10 grit, then a 5 grit, 2.5 grit, 1 grit, and then a half micron. Excuse me, those are microns, not grits. Your 20 micron is about equivalent to 900 grit, I believe, and the half micron is about 50,000 grit. Now, just for kicks, I went through and I did the process on a piece of junk old brass barrel that I had around. And I really wish I had like a water jet or laser cutter at my disposal, but you should be able to see pretty obviously here in the light right where I stopped lapping, and here's the original barrel. So for one, you can see a lot of shine, more shine off of it, and that's the effects of polishing. Half micron is way beyond a mirror finish. And over here, we have our nice sort of matte oxidized bit. The other thing to note is your choice of barrel, choice of material. When you're lapping, you cannot use a coated barrel. Otherwise, you have to lap through all of the coating, which is, it's not worth your time. We'll just put it that way. So if you have a Mad Bull coated barrel, they're good, they're cheap, they're reliable, but don't lap them. Stainless steel, brass, you're good to lap unless it's coated. The one thing to note, though, is brass, over time, this nice shiny surface, even though it's nice and polished, will oxidize. That means it's going to cloud up and it's essentially rusting. But it's just the rusting process for brass. Stainless steel does oxidize, but it really doesn't do anything when it does. It doesn't have any significant buildup like your other metals. So that's what makes stainless steel the better choice, in my opinion, for lapping and barrels in general, aside of its pure strength. It's not going to bend, really. Okay, so we have our isopropyl alcohol for cleaning in between. I have some paper towel. I find one sheet folded in half, or these are those weird double sheets. So fold in half, split it, then we're going to stack it, and then we're going to cut this into 5, and that should give you enough swabs to clean in between every round of lapping. Honestly, the cleaning in between every round is one of the more aggravating parts and what makes the process take so long. Okay, so we have our rod, and we are going to start out with 20 microns. So I have my diamond lapping paste, and I keep everything in their own bags, marked everything, so I can keep from cross-contamination. So I pull out my bit, I attach it to my rod. See, it just slides right on there. My ones are getting slightly worn. In general, once you have the lapping bit impregnated with the diamond compound, you really don't need to add anything. But I like to touch it up just ever so slightly in between here. There's that. Now, bring it closer so you can see my barrel here. Pardon the movement. Okay, so there's this, and what we're going to do is we're going to maintain the same orientation, insert it into the muzzle of the barrel, push it until it just comes out the back end, and because my guide rod here is much longer than anybody needs, we are going to mark it with a piece of tape so we don't overshoot my mark. It's harder to pull it back through once it's gone through too far. So I'm just folding over a piece of tape, so that tells me when to stop. It also helps keep my orientation. Now, included in his kit, he has this nice little end cap with a square guide rod. It's supposed to go over there, and you can tape it down to prevent rotation and wobbling of your rod within the barrel. Being that I'm using a 5mm round rod, it hardly has any wobble within the barrel, so I don't really worry about that. Okay, so now all that's left is to keep track of how many passes of each grit. So I make a little chart: 20, 10, 5, 2.5, 1, and 0.5. And you go through and you keep track of how many passes you make per grit so that you're getting adequate coverage. Hunt Seeker, I believe, recommends about a minimum of 50 laps per grit. I personally do at least 70 or more, especially if I lose count, but in general. So I've pushed it in one time, so that's one pass. Pulling it back, that's technically 2. But I count these, so that'd be 2 for me, 3, 4, 5. I make a tick. So we have just, on this return stroke, we've made 10 passes back and forth across the barrel. At this point, I pull it out, and like I mentioned before, we're going to rotate it a bit. This prevents any grooves from being cut inside the barrel. So 1, 2, 3. You want to make sure that you pull out so you can see the lapping pads on here. 4, I think that's 4. 5. Okay. Make another mark. Keep on doing this until we get 70 or more passes racked up. So right now I have 2 ticks, 20, because I do 5 goes back and forth, so that's 10, 20. So there's that. I'm going to finish up this grit, and then I'm going to come back and show you about cleaning